Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, I'm a film critic and amateur, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Hi, Kev.
Hi, Becky. I'm still very much liking amateur.
I love it.
have to say, I'm still liking that.
I like it so much that I'm almost tempted to stop watching Hammer films now so that I... Because what happens when I get to expert level? I'm going to have to change it.
You know, I was just thinking that. Let's make the most of it while we can, because this is not going to last forever, this amateur status.
In this podcast, Kevin and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue, and this week we are treading the boards and taking in some high culture with The Phantom of the Opera from 1962.
On stage is colour, beauty and light, but in the shadows lurks a monstrous evil.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we go into plot details and chat about the endings of all the films. So if you'd like to watch The Phantom of the Opera before you listen to our chat, you can pick it up on Blu-ray from Indicator. Is that another one that you've contributed to? Because I know you've done a few of the Indicator ones, haven't you, Kevin?
Yes, me and Jonathan Rigby did a commentary on that
Lovely.
one. And if I may blow my own trumpet, I don't do it often. A very good one it is too.
Do you both sing along?
No. There are limits to what we're prepared to do, or indeed what we're able to do. So no, we did not have a... Although now you mention it, No. I was going to say we should go back and re-record it, an operetta version of it, shouldn't we? But no, maybe not.
Yeah, you know how they do kind of, sing-alonga Rocky Horror and sing-alonga Wicked and that kind of thing. We should do sing-alonga Hammer's The Phantom of the Opera.
Hello, I'm Kevin Lyons, and here we are. We're talking about The Phantom of the Opera.
And I am Becky Darke, and here we are. La, 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 la.
And there you see why we don't do it as a musical. So
that's why we shan't be doing it. Yeah, good, exactly. Okay.
Proof positive. We should not be allowed to do sing-alongs.
So, Phantom of the Opera, this is, a big title in terms of literature, in terms of film, in terms of stage musicals. Everyone's heard of The Phantom of the Opera, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to be a horror fan to know Phantom of the Opera.
No,
absolutely not. No.
And it's one of the kind of universal monsters, for want of a better word. Mm-hmm. So Hammer are back working with Universal and adapting another horror classic.
Indeed. And at this point, I need to eat some humble pie, just a little. Need to address something that I said back in Shadow of the Cat a few weeks ago. If you remember, I said that the reason that's sometimes been given that Hammer didn't put their name on that film is because of their agreement with Columbia that only allowed them one film a year with other companies. And that allocation had obviously been taken up with Curse of the Werewolf. And my Facebook friend and commentator extraordinaire and terrific horror scholar, Troy Howarth, raised the point with me that how did they manage to do this and Captain Clegg for Universal if that was really the case? And it's a good question, Troy, and I think I've got to the bottom of it. There has been for a long time in books this idea that they were only allowed to make one film a year for other companies. Did a bit of digging. And in a March 1959 edition of Box Office magazine, one of the trade magazines in America, which was talking about the early days of the Columbia Agreement, they make mention of the fact that they could make two films a year. So he's been accepted for a long while that they could only make one. It looks like, in fact, they could actually make two. Now, this solves the problem of why or how they could make two films for Universal in a year. Mm-hmm. It then takes us back to square one. Why didn't they put their name on Shadow of the Cat? Which is a conversation for another time, and that time has probably passed. I honestly don't know the answer to that one.
The answer to that one is we just don't know.
We just don't know. But there you go, Troy. Hope that makes a bit more sense now that they could make these two films because they were, in fact, allowed to do two films and not, as it's been often reported, only make the one.
Fascinating stuff. Well, thank you for going above and beyond, Kev, and digging around into old issues of TV magazines to find this stuff.
I take weeks off my day job just to go to the British Library and sit there with trade magazines because I'm so bloody boring. That's what I do. That's what I think of as a good time, trust me.
No, I love it. I love it. And always good, to... I mean, the whole point of this show is to, educate not only the lovely people who are listening to us and entertain, of course. Edutainment, I like to call it. But educate ourselves as well. I mean, obviously, I am constantly learning. And as you said a few weeks ago, you don't like to be called an expert because that means you know everything.
Exactly. And this last week or so, I've learned something new about Hammer that I didn't know before.
There you go.
That is... excellent. That made getting out of bed worth it that day. Very few things do, but that did. So.
And it keeps the haters from your door.
Oh, Troy's not a hater. Troy loves what we do, but he was quite right to point it out. He's quite right to point out when we get things wrong. I'm not that thin-skinned, honestly.
Before we kind of move on from Universal and just talking about Phantom of the Opera in general, as we say, this is a big monster movie. It's very famous. Everybody's heard of it. So I thought we'd kind of have a quick look at kind of where we were at with the Phantom of the Opera until 1962 when Hammer did their adaptation. So the story starts as a novel by Gaston Leroux in 1910. And then I think kind of most famously, certainly as far as I'm concerned, but if there are more, Kev, I'd love you to fill in any blanks. We've got the very famous silent film in 1925, The Phantom of the Opera, starring the amazing Lon Chaney.
That's
and
right,
then in 1943, there's also a version called Phantom of the Opera starring the amazing Claude Rains. So we've got these huge kind of titans of acting and also, guys who were playing other very iconic horror monsters elsewhere, because obviously we've got Lon Chaney being the man of 1,000 faces.
Basically inventing horror films in a good many ways,
and especially kind of spearheading a lot of the creature makeup and stuff like that.
That's right.
And Claude Rains, obviously, who played the Invisible Man for Universal as well. So what are our kind of thoughts on The Phantom of the Opera as a story and as a monster?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I've not read the book, I must admit. I hang in my head in shame now twice in one episode. I've never read the book. But my understanding is that it's not particularly horrific. That's something that's been added with the films. And you can understand that because the horror that's in it is kind of visual.
Yeah. Yes.
It is the sort of the appearance of the Phantom, the sort of the ruined face and the sort of, this shadowy figure lurking around the opera house. And the 1925 version is peerless, to be honest. I think it's never been matched, not even here, and I love this version of the film. But I think we showed it, didn't we, at a screening?
Yeah. At the Regent Street Cinema in London.
That's right, yeah. Which was an incredible experience because we had an actual organist in the cinema with us. It was just, the print was, it had seen better days. It looked like it had been taken out to the car park and given a damn good kicking before it went through the projector. But it didn't matter. Am I right
in remembering it was a bit green? It was a little bit tinged, wasn't it?
It was a bit tinted, but I don't think it was deliberately tinted. I think it's just gone off a little bit. But it didn't matter. The audience were hooked on it, and quite rightly so, because it is an extraordinary film with a brilliant performance by Lon Chaney. And the unmasking in that film is, to use an overused word, is iconic.
It is.
It's, every kid that grew up in the 60s and 70s, like me, reading books about horror films, will remember seeing the photograph of the Phantom.
Yes.
Because it was just one of the most amazing things we'd ever seen at that point, And then we get the 1943 version, which is much more of it's much lighter.
Yes, it is.
Than the 25 version. It's still very good. In fact, it's so good that I think Hammer were looking at that rather than the 1925 version for influence.
That's interesting.
There's a lot more. It has a lot more in common with the 1943 version. It ups the romance part of the story and sort of plays down the horror. Hammer bring some of the horror back but keep the romance going. So I think the Hammer film strikes a really nice balance between the two.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to come back to that point later when we talk about the sort of balance between the horror and the romance, because what the novel and the 1925 and the 1943 film do is kind of play around with this like mix between those two elements. So
yeah.
I haven't read the novel either, but from what I understand, it sort of leans into the Gothic tragedy of the story. There's not so much horror. There's a bit more romance, although the Phantom himself isn't really a romantic figure. And it ends in a very sort of heartbreaking way where he dies quietly, sort of heartbroken after Christine has shown him kind of... From what I read about the way that the story in the novel goes, he sort of realizes that she loves him like as a human being rather than romantically.
Right.
And so sort of sends the lovers off, you know, with his blessing, and then dies heartbroken. So all very sad. Lon Chaney in 1925, obviously his version of the Phantom is much more horrific, much more monstrous. Yep. And it removes most of that romance entirely.
Sure.
And the Claude Rains Phantom in 1943, as you say, Kev, leans into it. But again, the Phantom isn't really kind of part of the romantic side of the storyline. Christine has got a romance with sort of two other young men. So there is like this love triangle.
Yeah.
But the Phantom isn't really...
he's an observer, isn't he? He's an observer.
Exactly. Whereas the Hammer horror film, you've got this beautiful romance between Christine and Harry, the producer of the opera that's being put on. Christine is obviously the opera singer, and the Phantom, but his sort of romantic involvement, and this is different then again to when we sort of come on to the much later versions when Andrew Lloyd Webber and people pick it up. Is that he is it's very unrequited, and he's kind of a bit sort of coercive, obviously, in his pursuance of Christine as a sort of protege and as a potential romantic partner.
It's interesting you see like that, because I never thought that he had that kind of interest in her.
Oh, okay.
I just think he was very controlling, but he just wanted... he was more like a Svengali than a Phantom. He was trying to create his own perfect vision of what a singer should be. And I never got the impression that he had any kind of romantic or sexual feelings for her. Which is interesting, because I like the fact that we both saw different things in it. I think that's, you know, a testament to how good the film is, that it can be read in slightly different ways. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I agree that it isn't sort of leaning into it hard, but I definitely picked up maybe a little bit. There's a couple of things that he says. We'll come on to talk about it.
Okay,
where I just thought maybe he's got designs on her, but you know,
fair enough.
That's
maybe
why
just being an old bloke. I'm just not a romantic, so I just don't. You know, I just don't notice these things. I've never noticed these things in real life, let alone in films.
So, Kev, you've hinted that you're a fan of this version. So what's your kind of history with Hammer's Phantom of the Opera?
Again, it's one of those films that I can't remember the first time I saw it. I suspect it was on television because, as we'll discuss later, this wasn't an X-certificate film, which is what was normal for Hammer at the time. This and its co-double bill mate, Captain Clegg, were both A certificates, although there's plenty, even though the censors got very hot under the collar about Phantom, demanded all sorts of things be removed, there's actually still some quite grisly and quite dramatic stuff in this film.
Yeah.
But I suspect I probably saw it on TV, possibly in an early evening screening or something, I don't know. But yeah, it seems to have been around for a long time, and I think I'm right in saying it was the very first version of it that I ever saw.
Oh, wow.
I think, the silent films weren't shown on television quite as much as they should have been, so I probably didn't see the Lon Chaney until much later. I know for certain I didn't see the 1943 for a very long time. So this would have been my first introduction to Phantom of the Opera, other than what I saw in Dennis Gifford's pictorial history of the horror movie when I was a kid. So, yeah, this is kind of important to me in that respect. And I think over the years it's been a little bit underrated in some quarters.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because this is the first time I'd ever watched it. And I went in with relatively lukewarm expectations.
Okay.
For, I think, exactly that reason, that I just don't really hear it spoken about with a huge amount of enthusiasm or love,
Right.
But I have to say that I came out of it and my expectations were not only sort of met but exceeded. Like I really, really enjoyed it, and I thought that the horror's really good. It's interesting that you say it's not an X, and I think you can tell that compared to some of the other Hammer horrors that we've watched that have sort of famously had that X certificate and have sort of earned it. But I thought that what there is works very well. And I think that central relationship between Harry and Christine is probably the most romantic and hot romantic relationship that we've seen in any of the Hammer horrors that we've done yet. I've fallen completely in love with these two. So back to our fanfic people, we're adding these guys onto the list of ones that we now need to know what happens afterwards and them living happily ever after together, please.
Indeed. They have got really good chemistry, these two characters, and you do feel they are the human heart of the story. And I think with a thing like Phantom of the Opera, because he can be so monstrous, both physically and emotionally, I mean, he is horribly manipulative throughout this whole film. Although, again, brilliantly, because of the brilliant way he's written, acted and directed and all the rest of it, we do feel sorry for him. He's still a bit of a monster.
Yes.
And we needed that human relationship to anchor all of this madness and weirdness that's going on around them. They do it beautifully. We'll talk more about the actors later. They are terrific.
Yeah, they are. And Anthony Hines is back on screenwriting duty. And one of the other aspects of this film that really struck me and sort of raised it above what my expectations for it were is just how ahead of its time it feels, with dealing with kind of exploitation and sexual predators in the performing arts.
Yeah,
this is like a Me Too movie.
Yes,
60 years or something before the Me Too movement. I'm really sorry if my maths is terrible on that, by the way, because I can't do that sort of thing just off the top of my head. I plucked 60 years out of nowhere. So,
to be fair, my maths is atrocious. I'm dysnumerate, which is like dyslexia for numbers, and I just, I can't remember my own phone number, let alone anything else. So you are forgiven. I'll
just say decades before the Me Too movement was actually a thing.
But you're absolutely right. It does sort of focus a lot on that. The Phantom in this, or Professor Petrie, as he once was, he's kind of, in a way, hear me out, don't cancel me, hear me out, in a way, he thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's moulding this extraordinary talent and building it to something more, something absolutely world class. Unfortunately, the way he's going about it is horrible. He kidnaps the poor woman, then sort of makes her sing till she drops, literally.
And then throws, canal water in her face.
That's right, yeah. And slaps her around because she's not, she's not trying hard enough. And at heart, it's a very difficult thing to talk about, but at heart, I think he is trying to do something good. It's just he doesn't know how to, and so he acts as a complete monster to achieve his goals. But I love that ambiguity with the character. I love the fact that we will talk about the ending and how sad it is. We do feel for him at the end, even though he's been a complete brute all the way through it. It's horrible the way he behaves in this film.
Yes, it is. But I'm not talking about him, Kev. I'm talking about Lord Ambrose Darcy, the true villain of this movie.
He is on a whole other level, isn't he?
Fine. The Phantom of the Opera, he's not a very nice bloke. He's doing some pretty shifty stuff.
Sure.
And, having people killed and kidnapping women and making them sing till they drop. We don't like him.
No.
He is nowhere near as bad as Lord Ambrose is in this film.
We do not shed a tear for Lord Ambrose in this film. We may do for the Phantom, but what an absolute monster, played by Michael Gough, who we've seen before, of course, in Dracula.
Yes.
And he was very good at playing these kind of supercilious arseholes, for want of a better phrase. He's described as a vile and vicious man, which is perfectly. I mean, that's Anthony Hines absolutely nailing that character in 5 words: a vile and vicious man. Absolutely repulsive. The only couple of missteps in the film, but the big misstep in the film that always bugs me is that he apparently gets away with all this abhorrent behaviour unpunished.
Yeah, he does.
We never see him get his comeuppance as he should do, and that, I think, is a misstep. I think that's a bit of a misstep.
Well, it's also quite true to life. Well,
yeah, there is that as well, that these people do tend to get away with it for years, don't they? But, yeah.
He is essentially a Harvey Weinstein character. He is the man who is supposed to have written this opera that they are performing at the London Opera House.
Yes.
He is helping to kind of cast the singers. We'll come on to talk about it, but for one reason or another, the main singer that we've got at the beginning of the film hands a notice in and goes back to Italy or somewhere.
That's right,
And so they have to cast somebody else. So he's very part of this sort of audition process. He immediately is making eyes at the character of Christine, who is one of the chorus singers who has put herself forward to be the new lead.
Yeah.
Gets the manager of the theatre to give her his card. And he's sort of leering over her when she's on stage. And he says, oh, yeah, she's very pretty. And the producer, Harry, goes, yeah, and she's got a pretty voice too. This isn't just all about what she looks like, you weirdo. And so he gives him his card, takes her out for dinner. He then goes to get her drunk, invites her back to his apartment for a late night singing lesson. And when she is very uncomfortable that she asks Harry to chaperone her, he gets the hump and says, no, don't worry about it. I'll go home alone. And the next day sacks her and not only bumps her back down to chorus, but removes her from the production entirely because she won't go back to his apartment and give him sexual favours. And then he auditions the new one, and there's this excruciating sequence where she is auditioning, and although she's got an absolutely fine singing voice, you can see from Latimer's reaction that she's not kind of lead material.
That's right, yeah.
But what Darcy can see in her is that maybe he's gotten in here. She's sort of she's not flirting overtly, but maybe she's got a little something about her that he is attracted to and thinks, well, maybe she won't put up so much of a fight against my predatory advances. And so he casts her instead. And he is just the most horrific man. And some of my favourite parts throughout this entire movie is when Harry or Latimer, the manager of the theatre, or the conductor kind of turn around and they say to him, they sort of tell him off, basically.
Sure, yeah.
Tell him that he's, being inappropriate or, outrageous or whatever. And for me, it's those moments that actually put it so ahead of its time, because it's not just this story of an exploitative composer who is using his power over a woman's career to get sexual gratification out of her. It's actually the fact that the men around her and the other women stand up and will actually say something to the Lord about it. And for me, I was like, all right, 1962, can we have more of this nowadays, please?
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there is a sort of a view that we didn't do anything about these things in the past. We just allowed them to happen, which is not true. People were being called out all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. But it's just that after the whole Jimmy Savile thing, Ian Hislop, in an interview, said there's a very big difference between knowing and proving. And part of the problem was, and the part of the problem the characters have in this film, is that Darcy has so much power.
Yes.
How can they prove that he's the monster that he really is? It's very difficult for them to do that.
Yeah. I just think there's another sort of scene that runs through it, which is this idea of like women really kind of sticking together as well. There's a beautiful scene where she first gets the card from Darcy before they realise that he's a wrong 'un. And she is so excited. And rather than all of the other girls from the chorus who were sort of all in their, dressing room, getting dressed after the rehearsal, and they are all so excited, not only that she got the lead part, there's none of this very kind of archetypal, oh, well, why did she get it? Why didn't I get it? And sort of making her feel bad. All of them are very enthusiastic and supportive. Then when she gets the card, rather than being like, oh, well, what, it's all right for you, isn't it? Why are you being invited out to dinner with the Lord? They're rallying around her. Oh, my goodness, what are you going to wear? I've got something you can borrow. Oh, no, actually, you should have something new for something like this. Oh, well, I don't have enough money. Oh, it's okay. I'll lend you 2, Bob. It's so refreshing and positive to see not only the women being really beautiful to each other, but as I say, when they're in danger, for the men to stand up and not only just kind of save them out of the paws of a werewolf or something, but to stand up to the Lord and say, you are being horrendous.
In my limited experience, that is how people behave anyway. People do sort of rally around, oh, brilliant, well done you, that sort of thing. That's what they do.
Absolutely. But it's not often how female characters are written.
It's not at all. It's normally that sort of bitchy infighting, sort of like nails and hair being pulled and all the rest of it. And it's just not like that in my admittedly very limited experience. It's just not like that at all. So this is a really interesting film on that level, definitely. It
is. And it's like I say, it's those elements that for me meant that I came away from it thinking, oh, actually, this is doing something not only quite different to the Phantom of the Opera story, but just doing something quite different in terms of just characterisation on film, to be honest. I really enjoyed it.
Definitely. I mean, this is something we're probably going to lose, particularly from Hammer, as we go along. They're not going to write female characters like this for a long while. And I think from British cinema in general, we're not going to start seeing this until at least the 1980s. So, yeah, I mean, good couple of decades ahead of their time. So well played, Hammer.
Yeah,
absolutely
definitely.
Superb.
It's great.
Well played, Anthony Hines, who, wrote the script.
Precisely that, yeah. Credit where credit's due. So
definitely.
How does this compare to Terence Fisher's other directing work for Hammer? Because he's back in the director's chair.
He is, and he's going to take a little break from Hammer after this. One of the many fan myths that blossomed about this film is that Hammer put him into exile because the film was a disaster. And clearly it's not a disaster. It didn't do as well at the box office in the UK as they might have hoped. But Terence Fisher just wanted a break from Hammer. He wasn't exiled by anybody. But this, he just took a little break and went up and did worked for some independent producers. But this is as good as anything else that he directed for them. In some ways, better. He adds, there's a wonderful little sort of Hitchcockian moment right at the start.
Yes.
Where the camera closes in on a screaming face, which then pulls back to reveal that it's not a scream, it's actually one of the singers warming up.
I thought Hitchcock as well when I watched that. It's beautiful.
Yep. Beautiful. It's a shock jump, but then revealed to be a joke, which is so Hitchcock. And, he's obviously, everybody working in the film industry anywhere in the world was watching Hitchcock in 1962. They were looking to see what he was going to do next. They were studying him. And I'm sure Terence Fisher, brilliant director though he was in his own right, had seen things like Psycho and, whatever else.
Yeah.
And had sort of said, right, you're never too old to learn something. And so he just slipped in this little sort of Hitchcockian moment, which is terrific and really quite funny.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
It's a Hammer film, so we're expecting a woman to scream, oh no, hang on a minute, she's singing.
I don't know why it specifically made me think of the 39 Steps. There might be a moment in that that kind of... I don't know. It made me think of Hitchcock, but for some reason, my brain specifically went to the 39 Steps.
It might be because it's like the theatrical milieu, because you've got a theatre scene, haven't you, in 39 Steps. So it may be sort of, connected to that, perhaps.
Maybe.
But he also does really odd things as well. Like we've got this terrific flashback sequence, which shows how Dr. Petrie became the Phantom.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is shot in Dutch angles.
Yes.
And what we mean by that is those weird canted... Yeah, just these canted angles. If you've ever seen the old 1960s Batman, you'll know what a Dutch angle is, because they appeared in that all the time. When I was growing up and I had no idea that this was a filmmaking technique, I was often watching Batman thinking, have they just dropped the camera or something? I don't understand why it's shot like that. It was only years later I found out about this technique. But it's brilliant, isn't it? Because it's kind of this woozy, sort of almost dreamlike atmosphere, which befits, him telling his story, which, may or may not be true.
Well, it befits a sort of fantastical flashback so well.
It does.
And what I will say, and absolutely no shade to the Batman TV series, because obviously it's brilliant.
Yeah.
But what is so lovely about this sequence is you don't, or I didn't, even necessarily think, oh, look, the camera's gone a bit wonky.
Right.
What you think is, oh, this all feels a bit weird.
It does.
And I love that it's actually, it's so expertly done that you don't even notice it. You just think, oh my God, like this is a flashback and there's something really odd going on.
I've never seen it on the big screen, but I wonder what it's like to watch it on a big screen when it suddenly dissolves into these weird angles, which at some points get more exaggerated than others.
Yes.
He's using the angle of the camera as kind of a way of building suspense towards the big moment when he becomes injured by the acid and the flames and all the rest of it. And it's a brilliant... I mean, that one sequence alone, he'd never repeated anything like that as far as I'm aware. It's just that one standout moment where he turned up to work and thought, you know what? We're going to try something.
Yeah.
We need to make this visual. You need to use different visual language for this sequence because it's a flashback. And so let's try it this way.
Yeah, and it really is remarkable, actually. It's very, very cool.
It's lovely, yeah.
And what it does, even just in service of the narrative, is we've kind of heard the story told of what happened that night.
Yep.
But you don't get all the facts. So when Harry is trying to figure out who Professor Petrie was and what might have become of him and how Lord Ambrose might have gotten hold of this music, etc., etc. Because far and above being a sexual predator, the worst thing that... Lord Ambrose Darcy is a plagiarist.
Oh yeah, I mean the man is a thief as well as a pervy lecher.
I think that's a thing from Reanimator, isn't it?
Yes, stealing his work. Yeah, and
the worst thing he is a plagiarist.
In any other film, you'd probably sit back and say, do you know what? That's a bit over the top now, isn't it? He's a filthy old lecher, but he's also a plagiarist. But he works brilliantly here.
What it does, Kev, is it just underlines everything we already know about this guy,
Yeah, there's nothing redeemable about that man at all. Normally with a villain, you will get something. You know, he cares about his old mum or something. I suspect he probably sold his mum to someone at some point, you know, but he's just that kind of horrible, nasty, perverted creep. There's nothing about him that's likeable. We're going to rant about him a little bit more later on, I'm sure, because there's a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
There's a lot to rant about there.
There's a brilliant line very early on that I think Harry, the producer, says, and he says, it's amazing that he's able to write such good music when he's got zero taste.
Yeah.
And then obviously that comes back because it's like, well, he didn't even actually write it. So he is just this tasteless creep.
A lovely bit of foreshadowing there from Anthony Hines.
Yes, exactly.
You know, that's actually the sign of a good writer, I think, when you can slip those things in that don't become evident until you see it the second time, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and I like that very much.
It's the sort of thing we were seeing actually in Captain Clegg as well.
That's right.
Because obviously that's this sort of mystery or sort of like identity thing kind of buried beneath what you think at first is this very straightforward story. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was a clever man, Anthony Hines. He was no Jimmy Sangster, and I'm sure he would have been the first to admit that he was no Jimmy Sangster, that there is no other Jimmy Sangster. But I think, you know, with Sangster having gone AWOL to do whatever else he was doing, I think Anthony Hines stepped up and does a tremendous job.
Yeah, I've got to agree. And so, yes, exactly. What we get is Harry sort of investigating how he's gotten his hands on this music, what happened to Professor Petrie, who was the actual composer. And Harry and Christine find themselves at this sort of print works where this accident is said to have happened. And so you get the kind of head of printing, the master printer, recounting this story of a kind of burglar who broke in and accidentally started a fire, and then thinking that it was a jar of water, he threw this liquid onto the fire to put it out, but actually it was acid, and so it all blows up in his face, and then he ran out. And so there's this kind of procedural part to this film as well, where Harry and Christine are trying to figure out what happened. But then obviously what the flashback then does is it shows you what really, really happened and the true tragedy behind the Phantom's character.
And it is a tragedy. And, you know, that's one of the other things I think that Terence Fisher does here. He actually plays up the romantic tragedy of the story.
Yeah, for sure.
More than perhaps any other version.
Yeah, it is very, very sad.
It is very sad, yes. 2 weeks in a row now, we've had Becky and tears at the end of a Hammer film. How about that?
I managed to just about bite my lip and hold it in for this one. So obviously, this is a story indelibly linked to opera.
Yeah.
Clues in the title. So the music plays a big part, and we've got Edwin Astley as the composer.
Yes, and you'll know his music even if you don't know that you know his music. If you've ever watched any of those ITC television series, you know, the sort of big action-adventure series that ITV used to make, things like The Champions, Adventures of Robin Hood, Danger Man, Department S, Randall and Hopkirk, Deceit, The Saint, Gideon's Way, The Baron. He wrote music for all of those.
Amazing.
He also wrote for films like one of the great classics of British cinema, Devil Girl from Mars. There's the Case of the Muckanese Battle Horn, which is a Goons spin-off from the Goons radio show. Another indelible masterpiece, The Woman Eater. The Giant Behemoth, The Mouse That Roared, and one that I'm sure a lot of you will remember. I certainly remember seeing it at the time, Digby, the biggest dog in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. And he wrote the scores for all of those films, so you will have heard Edwin Astley, even if you don't know that you heard Edwin Astley. He's one of those composers, you know. And he wrote an entire 5-act opera for this film, which was inspired by George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan, which is why it's called St. Joan. And hear the story of Joan of Arc. And he wrote the whole opera, even though you only hear small parts of it.
That is very cool.
That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, a really talented composer, actually. I mean, you listen to some of those TV things that he wrote, and they are etched on your memory. If you were there young enough... And those shows were repeated endlessly. Yes. Not only in the 60s, but the 70s and 80s as well. So I'm sure we've all heard them at some point. And, you know, you'll know them straight away. And, you know, it's just... He was a great composer. He's one of our great unsung composers in a lot of ways. You know, we know all the biggies, but he should be up there with them. And he has the good sense and the good taste to chuck in a bit of Johann Sebastian Bach as well.
Yes, he does.
Because let's face it, where would we be with the Phantom of the Opera story without a little bit of Toccata and Fugue in D minor? Mm-hmm. Because, you know, if it's a Phantom of the Opera film or it's Rollerball, you have to have Toccata and Fugue in D minor, don't you? And it just works so brilliantly. He's almost a sort of hoary old cliche, isn't it? You kind of think, oh, he's going to play that, is he? And as soon as it starts to play, you think, oh, of course he's playing that. Look at it.
So, firstly, quick note to producer Mike, who'll be listening. Can you drop in a little bit of J.S. Bach here, please, just so everybody knows what we're talking about? And it is used to superb effect here. It is so good. I was like, I almost sort of exclaimed with delight at this moment in the film, because you've got Christine and Harry are falling madly in love together. Mm-hmm. They've both been binned off by this horrible old lord back at the opera house because they dared to stand up to him. And they go out on this lovely sort of date together, firstly trying to hunt down phantoms and, sort of missing music and dead or presumed dead professors. And then they go out for some food and they go on this very lovely romantic coach ride around the park with Miles Matheson, driving around the park loads of times because they're too busy in the back of the cab smooching.
That's right, yeah.
And he keeps saying, one more time round the park, please, so I can smooch her a bit more. And she goes back to her rooms and she is giddy. You know that beautiful scene in My Fair Lady?
Yes.
When Eliza goes back and she's been to the ball and she sings I Could Have Danced All Night.
Yeah.
That is what this reminds me of, because she is almost dancing around her bedroom. It is so lovely.
And it's particularly beautiful, isn't it? Because we've already seen her being manipulated by Lord Darcy. Mm-hmm. And we're about to see her being manipulated by the Phantom. Mm-hmm. And this is the one man that's not actually manipulating her. He's trying to get a bit of a snog in the back of the carriage. Let's face it, who wouldn't? Yeah. But he's doing it in such a lovely and charming way.
He's earned it by this point.
He has. He's earned her trust before leaping in and sort of, pucker up, and all the rest of it, which is what Lord Darcy's approach is.
Honestly, Harry in this film is like green flags for days. I'm a huge fan. Not all heroes wear crucifixes, is all I'm going to say in Hammer films. This guy,
exactly right.
He's so nice, and she has obviously fallen madly in love with him because he's such a nice bloke. And so she's dancing around all giddy in her bedroom after being taken out on this very romantic date, and she throws back the curtains, and at her window is the Phantom's sort of familiar, I guess, like his caretaker, his sidekick. Menacingly leering at her through the window. And she's got these sash windows, and he pushes down this sash window, and the next thing you see are the Phantom's sort of grey, mouldy hands on the keyboards of his organ as da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. It's so good. I loved it so much.
And what was particularly good, what I particularly like about that moment is I love that piece of music, but it's quite sinister. It's in D minor. When I first started to learn music, virtually everything I played and wrote was in D minor because of that one piece of music, because I just thought it sounded so dramatic. It sounds, and it is such a dramatic and powerful and sinister piece of music. And it makes a beautiful juxtaposition between the sort of, the I Could Have Danced All Night moment.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we're into this this very dramatic sort of fanfare at the beginning on the organ. And it's, breathtaking, isn't it?
It's so cool. It's such a good moment. It's perfectly executed. I loved it. So, come on, let's talk about the Phantom of the Opera. not the movie.
Yes.
The bloke.
The character. Yes.
Yes. So we've got, we've already spoken about Lon Chaney and Claude Rains, obviously having famously played this character before. And Hammer's Phantom is played by the actor Herbert Lom.
Yeah.
And he also is credited, obviously, as Professor Petrie.
Yeah.
From the flashback. So I am not particularly familiar, or I certainly wasn't particularly familiar with Herbert Lom as the Phantom, not even when he's in the mask. And I feel like, as you've said so well, Kev, you know, the Lon Chaney Phantom is, you know, I feel like he's probably on the front of like the Taschen Book of Horror. Like he's so iconic. And Claude Rains has got a very iconic look as well. Maybe not quite as iconic, but definitely does. This one I had no knowledge of at all. So why do you think that is? Because I think he's very good, but he just doesn't seem to have sort of got his claws into horror fans' psyche quite so much.
It is an odd one, isn't it? And I can't quite think why. Maybe because the mask at the time was a little bit bland. It is just a sort of face covering. Of course, now we could look at it and think, oh, he looks a bit like Michael Myers, doesn't he, with that bland, white, greyish white face, just the eyes peering out. But, you know, at the time, I think maybe the 1925 version had been in circulation for a while. I don't know when it was last reissued, but that is so iconic. It's so grotesque, the image of the Phantom in that it's kind of difficult to beat that. And even the one with Claude Rains, you know, I can picture the Claude Rains one in my head. As soon as I start to mention him, having watched this version of Phantom of the Opera only last night, it is kind of difficult to actually get a grasp of what the mask is doing. Yeah. It's just like a face covering, isn't it? Rather than a, you know, it's a very odd one. I think in their sort of panic, that's not the right word, their desire not to go too far with the gore and the violence. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while, because there's an interesting person involved in this film that doesn't appear in it. But we've got to talk about him at some point. But that was all tied up with the fact that, you know, they couldn't go too far with this film. They couldn't do the full-on, you know, sort of splashing around of the gore of Curse of the Werewolf and Curse of Frankenstein and so on. So I think they kind of pulled back a little bit. They didn't want the Phantom to be too macabre. And I think they should have done. I think they should have gone for it. I think they should have made him a bit more grotesque. Yeah, I agree. And even because I was kind of on board with it. I don't dislike the look of the mask. I think that actually the times that it works the best for me is you get a lot of very tight close-ups on it. Yeah. Where his eye, because it's like it's a full face mask, but one of the eyes is covered. So he's only got one eye showing at all times. And actually those moments is when it was kind of most effective and most scary, when his eye is just kind of darting around behind it, and you know that he's always looking at something, you know, that he's got designs on. And the first time we see it, of course, is a very big close-up of the eye. And were you not reminded, like me, of the Curse of the Werewolf titles? Yes, absolutely. The big eye sort of peering directly at you. You know, that was quite a creepy moment. Obviously it was, yeah, it's really creepy. And then later we get the very tight close-up, and he's crying when Christine is doing her sort of big solo at the end of his opera. And that really reminded me of Leon as well, that tight close-up in Curse of the Werewolf, because I was like, oh my God, these guys are always crying in these films. It worked. They did it again because it worked. So, you know, filmmakers do not do something once and think, oh, that'll do, won't do that again. They look at it and think, oh, people reacted quite well to that. We should use that again later on. And, you know, I'm fine with that. I have no problem with them doing that. I think it works really well here. Definitely, I agree. And he's suitably monstrous and kind of menacing, I suppose. He's sort of whispering out of the shadows. He appears a couple of times. Obviously, he's snatched her away down to the sort of
level below in the sort of sewers below the opera house. But it's when Harry goes down to confront him and rescue Christine that the character of the Phantom sort of fell away for me slightly, because for me, he was too reasonable. We're being told that even as Professor Petrie, he was a bit odd. And then obviously he goes through this horrible experience, is wounded horribly. He has to exist in this sort of half existence in the sewers below the opera house. And so, I don't know, when he's having quite a reasonable conversation with Harry towards the end, after he's been sort of knocking her about and stuff and making her sing for hours and hours without a break, I was just like, I don't know, this isn't quite what I was expecting from the monster. Okay, I kind of like that ambiguity, but I can see where you're coming from. I can see why it might be, not what you wanted, not what you expected. I think, just maybe the way the scene was played, it just didn't quite land for me, I guess. We mentioned earlier a callback, by the way, to Curse of the Werewolf. Did you not think that I think it's the very first time we see the Phantom in full length, is at the top of a little flight of stairs. Very similar to at least two shots in Dracula. Definitely. The first time we see Dracula is at the top of stairs, and then there's that bit where he appears at the top of the stairs in the crypt. Yes. And I think that's, that again was Terence Fisher saying, well, you liked that. It worked. It worked once. I'm going to do it again. And it does work fantastically here, because you get that shot of him where you realise that, A, he's not quite as monstrous as we've been led to believe. That's right. But he's also quite a chilling looking character. Yeah. So you got that, you're torn a little bit already. That, he is a bit sinister looking. He's got a bloody mask on for a start, but he's not this sort of... the way they were making him out before is this almost supernatural force that was haunting the theatre. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's not, he's a bloke in a mask. And that's creepy in itself. But he's kind of not what they think he was. And I like that. I like that quite a lot. And there's a practical element as well to that, because we get Patrick Troughton as a rat catcher who encounters Harry and Christine when they are back at the opera house kind of late at night, and he is murdered by the dwarf that is hanging around with the Phantom of the Opera, and all of his rats become loose. Yes. And it's this kind of distraction so that they can get Harry to go and look in the back room, and they can snatch Christine away. And what he does before that is he picks her up and sort of puts her on top of these like crates or something. Yeah. So I assume the rats don't have an opportunity to run up her skirts. Exactly. Yes. Again, what a guy. He's been a gentleman, isn't he? He's been a gentleman. Such a gent. Yeah. But because she is that bit higher then in that moment, you need the Phantom to be kind of elevated at the top of the staircase. Yeah. Because you need him to be that looming presence. Of course, yes, a very good point. A very good point, Which I really loved. I do like that, I hadn't considered it, but you're absolutely right. Of course he needed to be at the top of the stairs, In some ways you kind of expect him, because of what we find out about him later, to rise up from the ground. Right! To come up maybe through the trapdoor or something. But of course, you're right, the fact that she's sitting on those crates, he needs to come down the stairs, so he's higher than her. Very. I hadn't thought of that. That's excellent. I like it. I like it a good deal. Thanks. So we've spoken a little bit about the mask, but let's talk about Roy Ashton's makeup on the uncovered face, because this is where I think that the sort of real tragedy meets monstrosity of the Phantom comes through. Yeah, I mean, he was sort of battling several things, Roy Ashton here, not least of which was the fact that Hammer wanted an A certificate for the film. It was a literary classic, so presumably they wanted a bigger audience than they would normally get. Yep, that makes sense. And so... they were going for this A certificate. Like I said, some strong stuff in it anyway. We only get the briefest shot of the disfigured face.
And Ashton apparently went through so many designs before, before Anthony Hines, who also produced the film, signed off on it, because he was very wary that we don't want any problems with the BBFC.
Right.
In fact, they had a conniption fit when they saw the film. So, oh, you've got to take this out. It was a lot gorier, apparently, its original cut. But I think what we see of it is actually quite well done, because we see just enough of it to understand how painful that was.
Yes.
We understand the agony that he went through without lingering on it. Later films would linger on those kind of wounds, but not here. We're getting this sort of brief glimpse of it, and that's quite enough. And I think it's very effective.
Yeah, I do as well. And there's because it's such a brief glimpse, what they seem to have done is played with colour quite cleverly, because there's a sort of green tinge to his skin, but then you've got these bright red sort of slashes across the face where I think I think we're supposed to believe the acid has kind of exploded in his face.
Yeah.
And there's something about the kind of contrast between the colour of his skin and the redness of those slashes that even though you just see it for the briefest moment, it really sort of still packs an impact.
You're getting the impression he's kind of mouldering away behind that mask, physically as well as emotionally, because obviously we've seen him already kind of talking to himself or listening to voices almost. Mm-hmm. So psychologically, he's a complete mess at this point, as you would understand, given what he's been through. But I think, they take the mask off and it becomes, he's as bad physically.
Yeah, definitely.
As he is emotionally. And what's interesting, of course, is the unmasking, which is the key moment in any Phantom of the Opera film, happens twice, and neither of them is done by the girl.
And the first time it happens, you don't see the face.
You don't see it. You just see Lord Darcy's reaction to it, which is brilliant. I love that. The fact that it builds it up that, oh my God, how bad is this going to be? This is a Hammer film. This is going to be horrible, isn't it? And then, eventually the Phantom rips his own mask off. Christine doesn't do the unmasking at all in this film.
It's interesting.
Interesting, and I think possibly unique.
Yeah, well, certainly out of the versions that I've seen.
I can't think of any other adaptation,
And just coming back to what you said about him kind of mouldering away, he says at one point, he sort of looks down at his own hands and he says, as you can see, I'm dying, or something similar like that.
Yeah.
And you sort of think my God, what a horrible thing to be aware of.
Yes.
For this man to kind of be able to look down at his own hands and know that he's kind of not long for this world, and there is that idea that he's almost kind of rotting down there. And
as well, the hands are very symbolic for musicians. It's how musicians create their music. And to lose the use of your hands, to use a real world example, I'm a big prog rock fan, so one of my heroes was Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, who took his own life because he could no longer play due to, was it arthritis? He had something, he couldn't use his hands. And the thought of, spending his final years not being able to make music was too much for the poor guy. And in a way, I can kind of understand that. I am strictly amateur time when it comes to music, but if anything happened to me and I couldn't play my guitar very badly, I'd be heartbroken. So for a professional musician who, is consumed by the passion for music, that must be horrific to look at those hands and think, they're ruined. I can't play and he just still managed to play the organ, but you kind of get the impression that he can't play it for long. Yeah, that is such a good point. I hadn't really put that together, but and you've actually got so many shots of him with those hands on the keys, haven't you? Yeah. Which is, and then he looks at them and says, I'm dying. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's horrible. It's so sad. Yeah. So tragic. It is. It really is. All right. Let's talk about some other members of the cast. We've mentioned the brilliant Michael Gough playing the repellent Lord Ambrose Darcy. And I think that he is, apart from some
smaller roles played by, I already mentioned Miles Malleson. Michael Ripper is back as a cabbie. But actually, this was a lot of new faces for me.
It was, yeah. Yeah.
So we've got Heather Sears is playing Christine Charles, who is the sort of female protagonist. She is the lead opera singer who sort of steps in, and she's also the object of affection of producer Harry and the Phantom. And whether you think that is kind of a romantic fascination or desire or not, she becomes this absolute kind of obsession.
That's right.
Him.
Yes. Yeah.
And Heather Sears, I think, is completely charming as Christine in this role. So, yeah, what do we know about Heather Sears?
Well, we know that Hammer, as is so often the case with these things, were very lucky to get her. She'd won a BAFTA for her performance in a film called The Story of Esther Costello in 1957. So this was a young woman who was on the up. She could have taken any role she liked. I think Phantom of the Opera is one of those stories which, it's not exactly, I'm trying not to denigrate any Hammer film here because I love them all with one or two exceptions, but it's not a Hammer horror film.
Right.
It's a literary classic. So they were able to get really good actors in. Sadly, it was the only time she worked for Hammer. And I think, they could have used her a few more times if she'd been willing, because I think she's gorgeous, she's talented. She wasn't quite talented enough to carry off the singing. That was apparently an opera singer called Patricia Clark.
I wondered.
Yeah. But, when you're watching it, I've got to say, she has a talent for lip syncing.
Yeah, it's really well done.
Yeah, it's not immediately obvious that's not her singing.
No, and you get quite prolonged sequences, especially towards the end when they're doing the big performance on opening night.
Probably a little bit too prolonged for some of us, but we'll come to that eventually.
I agree.
Yeah, not a big fan of opera, I have to say. Why is he watching a film called Phantom of the Opera when he doesn't like opera? Well, that's a whole other story of madness and obsession.
It's the Phantom bit. That's the bit we like.
Just the fact that I'll watch anything with a Hammer logo on it, but it's just. But yeah, I think she's terrific in this. She's really good. And like we said earlier, the chemistry that she has with Edward D'Souza as Harry, is palpable. You actually feel like these two actually are falling in love in front of your very eyes.
It's so
she plays
gorgeous.
It so well. She really does. And I do wish we'd seen her in more Hammer films, but. She's terrific. She's so good. And
Edward D'Souza is brilliant as well. I think he really kind of carries that, the sort of authority that you need to be, a producer and to stand up to people like Lord Ambrose. But he's also just got this lovely kind of softness that you need to also be able to sell a romantic lead, and I just think he does both really well.
He does. Fisher apparently had seen him on the stage in the West End and thought, there's one to watch out for. And so, he makes for a really impressive romantic lead. Like you say, he's got the authority, he's got the charm, he's got all the rest of it. He'll be back in The Kiss of the Vampire in 1963, which we'll look at in a couple of weeks' time.
Lovely.
And he really enjoyed his time at Hammer, it seems. He later said, my recollection is of coming into work knowing I was going to have a good time. It was really a wonderfully friendly place. You see, the thing was that whatever film they were making at Bray, it was the only piece of work that was being done. So everything was focused onto what you were doing. And so you felt very important without feeling self-important. You knew that you were involved in the only piece of work. That specialness rubbed off. Everybody felt special. The films felt special. Well said, Edward. Well said, Edward. I think
what an amazing quote!
Isn't that lovely? I think he sums up what the quintessential Hammerness of Hammer.
Yeah.
In that one quote. So clearly, not only a very super talented actor, a very handsome man, but also a very smart guy.
Aww.
He was very aware of his surroundings, or how Hammer were working as a company. And, fair play to him. He's, I always liked him, but he went up several steps in my estimation when I found that quote.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I'm a little bit in love with him now. Elsewhere, we've got Thorley Walters plays Latimer. Yeah. Tell me about Thorley Walters.
This is his first horror film for Hammer. We're going to see a lot more of him later on.
Yeah.
He's going to Dracula, Prince of Darkness, Frankenstein Created Woman, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, playing two different characters in one film after the other, but that's Hammer for you. Vampire Circus. And it's always an absolute pleasure to see.
Yeah.
He always played these slightly fussy roles, slightly bamboozled by everything that's going on around him. But he has some terrific moments here where he kind of does stand up to Darcy.
Yeah.
And that kind of fussiness disappears. Although it is quite lovely. He stands up to him at one point. I think it's Harry that comes in straight after Darcy has stormed out. And he's like, oh, I think I need to sit down. And he gives him a drink.
I know, it's so good. It's so good. I love that moment.
It's taken everything out of him to stand up to this man, but you know what? He's going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And I think Thorley Walters does that as well as he does everything else. He could do comedy, he could do straight acts, he could do all sorts of things. He was such an amazing actor. One of those faces, as soon as he appears, a bit like all of these guys in these films, as soon as he appears, you think, I know I'm onto something special here because Thorley Walters is in it.
That brilliant moment when he sort of swoons back in his chair because he's just been terribly, terribly brave. Yeah. But there's another bit slightly earlier where they are auditioning the replacement for Christine. And again, Darcy is leching up at the stage at her. And you've got Latimer stood next to him and he doesn't say a word. It is all on Thorley Walters' face. This incredible facial performance where you can hear his brain going, why does he like this woman? Yeah. She's dreadful.
Why is he like this? That's what you think. Why is this man like this?
Looking between the stage and Ambrose, and then to the stage and to Ambrose, and there's just this look of just dumbfounded, like frustration, but also just kind of, what is happening? It's amazing. I love it so much.
And that's the genius of a really good character actor, isn't it? That you can do that without stealing anything from Michael Gough. The spotlight is still on Michael Gough, but you can do it in such a subtle way that you kind of register it. And it's like, it's adding to Michael Gough's performance in a way.
Yes. Yeah,
because,
I love that.
And that's why people like Thorley Walters were so good. It's why, sadly, we just don't seem to have characters like that anymore. And I wish we did. We have these amazing character actors who were just so fantastic. Really, really good.
So we've already mentioned some other big names, not in big roles, but we have obviously got Patrick Troughton as the rat catcher, who comes horribly a cropper with a dagger to the eye, which is one of the best moments of horror in the whole film.
And he gets the best line in the film. They make a lovely pie, you know. I mean, I've mentioned before on the Main Evolution of Horror podcast that I have a serious aversion to rodents. And so this scene, as you might imagine, I don't pay a great deal of attention to it.
No.
Once those rats get free, I'm kind of looking almost anywhere but at the screen.
So I don't mind rodents at all, and I quite like rats. And it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me when they run out. What bothers me is when Patrick Troughton describes them as, I found 2 fat ones earlier, like little puppies. I was like,
yes.
I don't.
I know.
I'm like, horrible. I'm all right with rats. Let's not start saying that they're as big as puppies. That's a bit much, actually.
Yeah. Let's, no, you see, that may be why, so I'm amazed you didn't just hear, which would be me falling out my chair, fainting at the very thought of puppy-sized rats. I'd like pick myself up and try to carry on.
It's so funny when he's then like digging around in the sack trying to find them, because he's like so proud and he wants to show them off to.
Yeah.
And I think Christine she sort of like out of the corner of her mouth says to Harry, she just goes, "Please make him stop."
Stop. Yeah. He's a very odd little character. It's a tiny little role for Patrick Troughton. He wasn't Doctor Who yet, but he was already massive because of his TV work in this country. He was already a big star. And he kind of, it's a morning's work.
Yeah.
At Bray.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they were lucky to get him as well, which is fantastic. I love to see, when guys of that character turn up to do a Hammer film, they turn up for 2 minutes.
It's so good. And
it's
also,
wonderful.
I know that he's Doctor Who, but for me, he's the priest out of The Omen.
Yeah,
who gets kebabbed.
I think we're going to have to start doing this thing now where I've already crowbarred in Doctor Who as many times as I can, and we'll continue to do so until the end of this, and you should try and get The Omen in as often as possible.
Yeah.
And we'll tally it up at the end. Who managed to sort of crowbar in as many as they could.
And then Michael Ripper, who obviously we saw at his absolute greatest and best in the film that we talked about last week, Captain Clegg, which is the kind of partner movie on the double bill with Phantom of the Opera. And he plays this huge role in that and absolutely heartbreaking. And now he is just back to being a cabbie again, and I think has like not even one line, it's like one word, I think. One
word, yeah. One word and a hell of a lot of makeup.
Yeah, weird, like fake
to the point
nose.
Where you barely recognise him. And he's sort of frozen, isn't he? He's sort of like been out in the cold and he's got frost all over him.
Yeah, of course.
Because he's kind of really cold. You know, it's a lovely little moment, but you do think, you know, like... Yeah, I think, was it Anthony Hines, I think, was pretty good friends with Michael Ripper, which is why, you know, he tried to cast him as often as possible. I think this was kind of a favour, basically. You know, so you did really good work for us on Captain Clegg. Come and do a morning for us on this one. We'll stick you in some makeup, but we'll pay you for it, and, you know, you'll be fine.
And then...
yeah, he's great.
The other cabbie, as I think I've already mentioned, is Miles Malleson, who we know from Hound of the Baskervilles.
We do, yes. We know from lots of things.
He was the funny vicar in that.
Yes. And he's just, again, he's just one of those faces. The minute he appears on screen, you can't help but smile.
Yeah.
Because he's just so lovely in everything he does. And, you know, he was never a star. He was always a character player. But he always turned up in these small parts and pretty much stole the scene from whoever the star was just by being Miles Malleson.
Yeah.
And his bizarre collection of wigs. I think he was quite thin on top, and every time we see him, he seems to have a different wig on. Some of them better fitting than others, let's say. but he's lovely in this, isn't he? This kind of sympathetic cabbie who's like, yeah, I'll keep driving around the park for them so that they can have a canoodle in the back of the thing. He's so sweet. The way his head appears in the hatch at the top.
Yeah, that's right.
He's so funny. It
is really funny. It's great. Yeah. Anyone else of note?
There are 3 people of note, none of who are in the version you would have seen.
Okay.
Liam Redmond and John Madison. They turn up as a pair of Scotland Yard inspectors investigating the case in some new material that was shot at Universal Studios without Hammer's involvement for the American TV version. They wanted to bump it up so it fit a 2-hour time slot, more advertising. So they just went, without Hammer's involvement, they just shot some whole new scenes of 2 guys standing around talking about the case. Completely disconnected from the rest of the film. We're going to see this happen again with Kiss of the Vampire and Evil of Frankenstein. They're going to do the same thing, which is really peculiar. It's very odd. I have seen that footage, very, very poor quality footage, and it's nothing at all like the rest of the film.
That must have felt so weird to American audiences. Like, sorry, what's happening now?
What's going on? Where do these 2 guys just come from? Why does this look like a movie of the week, TV movie of the week thing, you know?
Yeah, and why are they not interacting with any other character in the movie?
Characters, exactly. Yeah, what the hell's going on?
How odd.
Very. But there was another name attached to this film. Now, assuming as you've not mentioned it, you don't know this story. I shall tell it. Universal had opened up the vaults to Hammer to do whatever they wanted with their back catalogue. We've mentioned that before. And Hammer had been circling around Phantom for quite a while before, you know, so they couldn't get it together. They weren't quite, there were a lot of other things they wanted to do instead. But then this devilishly handsome expat from Hollywood turned up, back in the home country, looking to further his recent escape from the studio system, a chap by the name of Cary Grant, who made it known that he'd quite like to appear in a Hammer film.
I'm sorry.
According to the family legend, this may well have been debunked by now by other members of my family, but I'm going to go with it because I've dined out on this quite a lot. He is my, 17,000th cousin 200 times removed or something ludicrous, but he's somewhere in my family. Quite clearly, by the time it got to me, the handsomeness, the talent, the charm, that had all worn off. That had all gone. Those genes had depleted by the time it got to me. But he is apparently related to me, and he was apparently in line. Or, I say in line. He'd expressed an interest in being in a film, and they thought the Phantom would be a good choice for that. because big literary classic. It does raise the question, and this has been debated quite a lot over the years, of who he'd have actually played.
Well, yeah, because you don't put Cary Grant in your film and then cover his face, do you?
No, the most handsome man in Hollywood at the time, one of the most recognisable faces in the world. Let's stick him behind a mask.
Yeah, no.
He was a bit too old, bless him, to be playing Harry. And he was way too charming to be playing Lord Darcy.
Oh, God, yeah, that wouldn't have worked at all.
So who did they have in mind?
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever got to the bottom of that, but,
Christine?
Played Christine. Yeah, well, that was another thought that did occur to me. He was going to play the young ingenue to, show off his range. But no, in the end, he backed out. He probably persuaded against it by his management, I would think. And he actually insisted that the Hammer sex and violence had to be kept to a minimum, which is why, they were chasing that A certificate as well. Anthony Hines said that he knew he'd never make it, but was insistent, so I wrote the thing for him. So Anthony Hines, I think he was a pragmatist. He realised that, Hammer were doing very well at this point, but honestly, Hollywood royalty like that? Yes, so we're going to get, Bette Davis in at some point. That was going to happen, but at this stage we're talking about a whole other level of Hollywood royalty when it comes to Cary Grant. He was the king of Hollywood, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And They must have been just gobsmacked that he'd even suggested I could be in a Hammer film.
Yeah.
But I think Anthony Hines knew from the start, it's a lovely idea, but it's a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. His management would have, as soon as they found out, his management were probably hauling him over the coals saying, what the hell are you talking to those limeys about? Forgetting that he was a limey, of course. But, he's like, wait, what are you doing? Why are you talking to them about this nonsense? We can't have you doing that. Which is a shame, because I'd love to have seen Cary Grant. I love to see Cary Grant in anything, but seeing a Hammer film, it would have been terrific. But like I say, who would he have played?
Yeah, that is really fascinating. Oh my God, it's one of
amazing?
It's one of those things like the sort of alternate universe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thought experiments.
Yeah, there he is. Maybe he didn't have an ego on him, and he would have played the Phantom. That voice. That voice as the Phantom, Anyway.
And he would have got the flashback scene. Maybe they'd have just made that slightly longer, given him a bit more screen time.
I suspect they'd have told the story linearly, and the first half of the film would have been Professor Petrie, and then the Phantom would have appeared right at the end almost, So, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been interesting.
It would have been interesting, but, it wasn't to be, sadly, but there you go. It's a nice little bit of history, I suppose.
We'll sort of move towards the ending, and we've said, already a couple of times that, it's a tragic story. This is historically a gothic tragedy as a narrative. And I think that the self-sacrifice that we see in this version just adds to that, because
of course
what we get is after Harry has rescued Christine and he has this interaction with the Phantom, and he is filled in on, Professor Petrie's sort of tragic story where he was basically a penniless but very talented composer, went to Lord Ambrose to have his music published, who then stole it, didn't give him any money, put his name all over it, took all the credit. And then when he was trying to kind of get it back, was the victim of this horrible accident that, scarred his face and took his eye and kind of sent him down into the sewers below the opera house. He sort of is trying to, as you said earlier, Kev, mould Christine into kind of the perfect songstress to do justice to his music. And I think what I was reading into in terms of the sort of romance behind it was when he keeps saying to her, "You will sing only for me." Right. But I think you're probably right, actually, that maybe it isn't a romantic desire. It's a sort of misguided control and kind of ownership over not necessarily just her, but the music that he feels that he's needing to kind of sort of put back onto this thing that he created.
I think crucially it's not a sexual desire. his feeling towards her. He has no sexual intentions to her whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know, he may want to control her, he may want to mould her. He's completely misguided in the way he's doing that, but he doesn't want her in the way that Harry probably does, the way that certainly Lord Ambrose Darcy bloody well does. But then, you know, to be honest, I think he'd have probably shagged the Phantom as well. He was such a horrible, nasty little sexualised creature. Yeah, horrible. But the Phantom does not have those feelings. And I think that's the crucial part of it, that, you know, Terence Fisher did see this as a love story. And I think he plays up that part of it. And, you know, maybe the Phantom comes to love Christine, but in a very different way, I think. He's not in a sexual way. I want to think that at the end he has a moment of redemption, an epiphany at the end where he realises, I've done this all wrong.
Yeah.
I've been a horrible arsehole about this, but my God, she's great, isn't she? Mm-hmm. She's beautiful. She's talented. Listen to her. You know, and it's sort of right at the very end, I get this feeling that maybe he kind of redeems himself, whereas Lord Darcy doesn't. He just buggers off and disappears from the plot and runs away, basically. Completely.
He has no redemption whatsoever.
Yeah.
And obviously we get that very tender moment with the tight close-up on the Phantom's eye when he is crying as she sings the kind of last aria. And he's essentially seeing this work that he had stolen from him, his life's work, you know, his most important piece, that he had sort of taken away, and that then led directly to, you know, the kind of monster that he has been forced to become.
Yeah.
He sees it performed by this beautiful woman, and he sees it kind of come to fruition in front of his eyes. And that's kind of what he's always been looking for. It's love for the music, or passion for the music.
That's right, yes. I think his romance is with the music.
Yes, I agree.
Whereas Harry's is with Christine. You know, and I think he just sees Christine as a kind of tool to sort of achieve his orgasm with music, as it were. You know, that's all he's really interested in, is getting that opera performed the way he wanted to see it or hear it performed.
Yeah.
And at the end, those tears, they're tears of joy because it's happened. I think they're tears of sadness because I think he knows how this has got to end.
Yeah.
And I think they're tears of pride as well. I think he almost, at the end, I think those are the tears that a father cries for their daughter when their daughter does something amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I think he's a complex character, and I think you can read it in any one of those ways, or even all three, if you want to.
Yeah, definitely. And especially if you're watching this film in the context of the other versions that came before it, because he kind of embodies almost all of the different versions of the Phantom in this one, because you've got the sort of heartbreak and romance of the novel. You've got the kind of overcoming the sort of revenge and the monstrousness of the Lon Chaney version in 25. And in the Claude Rains film, he is almost more of like a paternal representation of the character. Yeah. And so you kind of get all of those like in this one moment, which is amazing.
That's right. It's beautiful. It's just such a beautifully judged moment. And Herbert Long really earns his stripes with that one.
Yeah.
I don't know what they paid him, but he earned every penny just for that moment, you know. And then, you know, sort of
really cool.
He meets his end, which he has to, because that's the demands of the story. And the character knows that he's going to meet his end. He's got nothing else to live for.
This is it, right? What's he going to do?
What's he going to do now? Yeah, he's seen his opera performed. He's had his revenge. He's moulded Christine into this marvellous singer who, you know, he hopes will go on and have a terrific career. He's got nothing left. He's dying. He keeps reminding us of that he's dying. So, you know, he comes to his end. And the last thing we see of him is that mask, rather forlornly, lying on the floor.
Do you think he does get his revenge? What do you think is kind of his final sort of conclusion with his revenge against Ambrose is?
I think I don't think particularly against Ambrose the person, because Ambrose, like I say, gets away with it.
Yeah,
which is a bit of a misstep. I think he gets his revenge because he has actually heard the music that was in his head being performed at a very high level by a woman that he clearly sees great talent in. And I think that's enough for him at that point.
Yeah.
I think,
fair.
He's going to leave it to others to sort out Lord Darcy bleeding Ambrose, or Ambrose Darcy, or whatever he is, a monster, the real Phantom of the Opera. He's going to leave other people to sort that out. He has just achieved what he always wanted to achieve, and he's heard his music being performed beautifully. And that's all he wanted. That's all any composer wants, I think. It's just to hear their music being performed. He may not get the recognition for it, but he knows. Christine knows.
Yeah,
Harry knows.
He knows. Absolutely.
And, I think Harry, Christine and the dwarf are the only people he actually cares about. They're the only people around him that have ever shown him any attention since he became the Phantom, I think.
Yeah.
So, they all know the truth. And I think he just goes to his end content with what he's achieved.
Yeah. Because what happens is the dwarf jumps down onto the chandelier, and the kind of the gothic imagery of this swinging chandelier over the stage is incredible. And then the rope frays under his weight and falls down, and it's just about to catch Christine. And the Phantom sort of throws himself in the way and pushes her out the way, and he gets crushed. And then, you're right, there's that beautiful just closing shot of the mask kind of discarded on the stage as the credits roll.
And no longer needed. That's the point. No longer needed. He's redeemed himself in his own mind. He has treated Christine abysmally, but right at the end, he kind of becomes a surrogate dad for a second and throws his own life underneath that chandelier to save her. Which, I mean, what more could you want, really? He's heard his music and he's saved the life of this woman who maybe he did love in a strange sort of way. A way that only he could probably understand. Yeah.
I wonder if, because obviously now he's kind of shown himself to everybody, right? Because he's sort of right in the middle of the stage in front of the audience, and everybody all sort of on their feet and gasping. Obviously, then there's going to be questions.
Of course.
And what I kind of hope is that Harry and Christine tell the story.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so actually he does get his posthumous flowers,
I don't hope that. I know that. I know that Harry would. Harry's the kind of guy who would... Harry is the final weapon of the Phantom's revenge. That he knows that Harry knows the story now, and he will expose Darcy Ambrose.
He
will expose him eventually. It all happens off camera. I'd like to have seen it happen on camera because I want to see that bastard get his just desserts.
Definitely.
But we could reconcile the fact that, Harry is such a good guy that he would pursue that. And he would make sure that Professor Petrie was remembered and respected.
Yeah, very cool. Any favourite moments that we haven't covered yet?
A few. There's a terrific scene near the beginning with a hand slicing through a sheet of canvas.
Oh my God, I can't believe we haven't talked about this moment. It is so cool.
Amazing. His hand comes through this canvas and then it tears apart and there's a hanging body that swings right up into the camera lens and caused mayhem down at Soho Square when the censors saw that. You can't have that. They demanded, because apparently it swung back and then swung back again into the camera. They said, no, one swing into the camera is more than enough for anybody, thank you very much. But what a terrific moment. And, when people say, it's not really a horror film, is it? Yeah, it is a bloody horror film. Look at that scene. That's terrific.
Genuinely shocking, that moment.
It's amazing. There's some lovely character stuff we haven't mentioned. There's Renee Houston, who's wonderful as the dyspeptic landlady, Mrs. Tucker, who's terrific. She's just so funny. She's the great comic relief. Mrs. Tucker. She's basically she's like all of us get to a certain age. We get a bit windy, and it's like she's got it worse than most. She's so funny. It's just a lovely little bit of respite from the bleakness of it all.
Yeah, definitely.
We've mentioned the weeping tears of joy from behind the mask. That's lovely. I also like, and it's another character thing, the cleaners in the theatre.
Oh my God.
These gaggle of old hags who are sort of, like there to clean up, and they're sort of going through what they found, what's been discarded in the theatre, and dividing it up amongst themselves. And they're all sort of cackling away to each other. They're a bit like the witches in Macbeth, aren't they? Sort of low-rent version of the witches. And they are wonderful. When they... Harry comes in and then spins them this tale about a
diamond brooch.
Diamond brooch, that's right. That's been lost, so we can get rid of them, so they can sneak into them. They all go scattering off in search of this diamond brooch.
It's so good. Scattering off is absolutely right. They're these four women who almost feel like one entity, because whenever they move, they all move together.
Yeah. They go
one of them says, because they come in and because it's after hours, and she goes, "Looking for a nice corner to do some courting, was you?"
Right. Yeah. Oh, they're very very earthy women.
They're
amazing. Really are, and I love them. I think they're so funny. They're just they're one of those supporting characters that really just fleshes out. I know, they are, like you say, they are a character.
Yeah, they are.
They're as one. There's four of them, but they are as one.
Oh, they're
and they
brilliant.
just sort of flesh out the sort of the milieu, as it were. The film would be poorer without them, I reckon.
Definitely. And also there's another moment of kind of characterisation for Harry and his interaction with them, because, again, if it was, say, Darcy... or even maybe Latimer, who came across them, they would have, sort of shooed them off, or, don't you speak to me like that, or whatever. But Harry has just got this very amused little smile on his face.
Yeah. You get the impression, don't you, that they know him of old.
Yeah.
That, he's been around. He's probably been a bit of a lad and brought a girl back before, sort of thing, And they kind of he's been nice to them. These are kind of working class women who are probably invisible to the likes of the Lords.
Well, exactly. And he's
along
just...
comes this nice guy, Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking for a nice dark corner. So good.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love it. They are so good.
I'll tell you, actually, the one thing that I did want to touch on that we haven't spoken about yet is... how incredible, and I know that we always talk about this, and it's a bit of they're banging on about the sets again, but
yes,
my God, the sort of under opera house sets where it's kind of, it's under in the sewers, but it's all sort of like craggy rocks, and there's an incredible shot right at the beginning where the dwarf is kind of just perched on top of one of these sort of slabs of rock, listening to the Phantom play the opera. It's like something, it looks like something out of Shakespeare. It's incredible. And it's, obviously it's all flooded. You've got the organ, and that is just amazing set work.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's Bernard Robinson and Don Mingay again.
Of course it is.
They're just, we sing their praises every film, and quite rightly so. They
But again, this is so different again. I think that's why it's worth really pulling it out, because it's not just they've done another manor house and it looks a bit different,
exactly,
or they've
totally
done a big
different
house but this time it's in Spain. It's like, this is really different, and really gives you such a sense of space that this guy's living in,
and a brilliant bit of mixing of sets and real locations, because the Opera House is actually the Wimbledon Theatre on the Broadway in Wimbledon.
Oh, okay. I've been there.
Have you been there? Oh, there you are.
I've been there.
You have been in that theatre, and you'll know.
That's cool.
You'll know it's not a terribly big theatre.
No.
It's not the biggest. They did look at the Royal Opera House for a while, but I'm assuming they wanted too much money.
Yeah, I would imagine
and so. They went off to Wimbledon instead. And, so apparently Terence Fisher was most perturbed about how he was going to film on this tiny stage. But he does it, he does it brilliantly anyway.
It feels very grand.
I can't tell where the location footage at the Wimbledon Theatre ends and the sound stages at Bray begin. They're so well done that they sort of... How much of that is at Bray? How much of that is at the theatre? Obviously, the Phantom's lair is on the soundstage.
Yeah.
And all the outside scenes, the little Docklands bits, they're on the backlot at Bray.
Are they really?
Yeah. In the background, you can see they've just built a new village square set.
Right.
And that's what you see in the background of the scenes set by the riverside.
Okay.
And it's beautifully done, isn't it? It's like you would never stop and think, oh yeah, that's obviously a studio set.
Yeah.
Because, as I keep on saying, Bray wasn't the biggest studio in the world. We're not talking about Pinewood-level studios here. It was a relatively tiny space. But they did so much great work at making it, just filling it with everything and using forced perspectives and just making it look bigger than it actually was. And that underground lair is probably the best thing we've seen them do so far.
It's incredible. I mean, it is cavernous. I don't understand how they've done it.
Yeah, no, I don't. I've read books about it and I've seen behind-the-scenes pictures and I still can't quite get my head around how they managed to pull that off, to be honest.
It's amazing. And you really, you kind of need that as well to build this, as I say, this sense of place for where, the Phantom exists.
And the character as well. We need to see where he's living to understand how far he's fallen, literally.
Absolutely.
In this case, we need to know that he's come from this sort of, probably quite respectable middle class setting. He's a composer. And now he's living in this dank, cavernous underworld. He's literally fallen into hell, basically. Yeah. And it just adds to the sadness of it all, really.
How did this one do commercially for Hammer? I think you suggested last week when we were talking about Captain Clegg, which this was double billed with, not super brilliant.
It didn't do as well as Hammer might have liked, I think, in the UK. It wasn't a disaster by any means. All that talk about, Terence Fisher being exiled because the film was a massive flop. No, it just didn't do as much as they might have hoped that it would have done. Had they got Cary Grant...
well,
they could have all retired and never made a film again. So in some ways, let's say thank you they didn't get Cary Grant. But it did much better in the States. And I do wonder if perhaps the A certificate put off Hammer fans.
I wonder, yeah.
There was already a fan base at this time. Obviously pre-internet, so there was no, connection between all these people. But there were fans who were turning up to see these films. They expected an X certificate. They expected sex and violence. What they got was a love story.
Yeah, basically.
So I wonder if word got around saying, yeah, this isn't exactly Dracula, is it?
And also you wonder, on the other side of the coin, obviously your point about Phantom of the Opera being a literary classic, maybe expanding things for a wider audience. I mean, that makes perfect sense in theory.
Sure.
But if it's got the Hammer logo on it and they are at the time so famous for horror, it's possible that the people who would have gone to see the Phantom of the Opera, but not for the horror version,
right?
Not for the horror reasons. May have been put off by that. So you've almost got,
of course, it kind of backfired.
Them not going because it's too horror.
That's right.
And the horror fans not going because it's only an A certificate.
Well, I suspect all of this played into it, which is such a shame because it did then get this reputation for many years. When I was first getting into films and reading the books and magazines, and people saying, it was Hammer's first big misfire, and it's like, no, it wasn't. Not even close to being a misfire. It has so much going for it. It really does. And I just don't understand why it was not so well received over here rather than in America. I think, in America they like the sort of the period English setting. That's always gone down well over there. So there was all of that. But it did okay over here. It didn't lose money, but it didn't make the huge amount I think Hammer were hoping for.
What about for you? Whereabouts does this rank compared to the other Hammer films we've discussed?
I'm going to give it upper, very high upper. The only reason that sort of holds it back a little bit, we touched on it just now, there's a bit too much bloody opera for my liking. Yes, I know it's called Phantom of the Opera, what do I expect? But there's a little bit too much. It's more like operetta than opera as well, which is even worse. And It just does nothing for me. And he says every time we're getting somewhere, we have to stop for a bit of singing.
Yeah. Also, English language opera.
I know. Come on.
God.
Come on. If you're going to do it, do it in Italian.
Gauche.
Exactly. Exactly. Bloody Philistines. But I think, in terms of overall, this comes second only to the 1925 version as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it's ever been bettered.
Well, I'm also going to put it in upper. I'm going to go lower upper.
Okay.
But I was just really pleasantly surprised. Like I said at the top of the episode, I didn't really know what to expect, but my expectations weren't high.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard it spoken about with a great deal of affection or enthusiasm. I wasn't familiar with the kind of look of the Phantom himself. And I just thought, this is going to be, a shoot and a miss.
Yeah.
And I came away from it thinking, right, well, actually, that was very good. It's upper for me. I really liked it.
Good, excellent. And if you've, like Becky, you've not heard much good about it, hopefully we've said enough good about it to make you want to go and watch it. I don't think we've spoiled the ending particularly, because at least it's Phantom of the Opera. He's not going to go off Christie into the sunset at the end, is he? He's not going to end like that. Never does. But if you've not heard good things about it, ignore all that and give it a go for yourself, because I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. Maybe like Becky perhaps was. Yeah,
definitely. Let's just hope that we haven't bigged it up so much that now everybody's horribly disappointed.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. Next week we will be back in the realm of sci-fi, plus biker gangs and creepy children, with 1962's The Damned. If you're watching along with the podcast, this one isn't available to stream at the moment, but you can pick it up on physical media, and you should. Little aside, randomly found this for £8.
What a bargain.
In CEX the other day. The Indicator Blu-ray, £8. I couldn't believe my luck.
Bargain. I'd spend 10 times that much on buying a copy of this film, because it is magnificent. Spoiler alert, I quite like this one.
Great, yeah. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but it's got Oliver Reed in it, so I've got high hopes.
Yeah, I'm not going to turn up next week for about half an hour. I'm just going to let you drool and ramble about Oliver Reed for half an hour. Then I'll turn up when you're a bit more, composed.
Yeah, I've got myself under control.
Yeah.
To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout this podcast, head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us questions or comments for upcoming mailbag episodes. You can drop us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com. You can follow the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram at EOH_network. You can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky at Bunny Darke. And Kev, where can people find you?
Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, all as EOFFTV. And I'm on Facebook as both EOFFTV and Kevin Lyons. So, yeah. Oh, and I'm on Letterboxd. I forgot to mention that last week. I'm also on Letterboxd. And thank you to all those people who've joined on Letterboxd. That's been amazing. I don't use it for social media, but it's lovely to have all those people there.
Oh, I'm also on Letterboxd. Becky Darke at Letterboxd.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes. Let's try promoting ourselves on
I'll add it into the notes.
We should.
Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for another episode of Hammer Time.